Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to make one of my favorite French pastries, the eclair. Now this is a recipe that you guys have been requesting ever since this channel launched, so I thought it was time to get to this one. Now I will be honest, eclairs do take a little bit of time to put together, but the results are well worth the effort. So settle in, grab yourself a cup of tea, and let me show you how to tackle one of the world's most delectable treats. So the first thing we're going to do is create the pastry cream that is going to fill our eclairs. So in a large saucepan, you're going to add 2 cups of whole milk, and then you're also going to add a vanilla bean. So just take a vanilla bean, slice it down the center, scrape out the seeds, and pop the paste in with the milk. And then the other thing I like to do is also throw in the bean pod as well. There's a ton of flavor in that pod, so why put it to waste? You can add that too. So you're just gonna simmer your milk for about 3 to 4 minutes, just until all of that vanilla bean paste starts to come to the surface. At that point, you can fish out the vanilla pod and set your milk aside to cool. Then in a large heat-safe bowl, you're going to add 4 egg yolks, 1/3 cup of sugar, and 1/3 cup of cornstarch. You can go ahead and whisk that up until you get a nice pale yellow color. And then we're gonna go back to our milk mixture and we're gonna slowly pour it into the eggs, whisking all the while just to temper those eggs so that we don't scramble them. And then you'll see you'll have a nice liquidy custard on your hands. At that point, you wanna wash out your saucepan, take out a large fine mesh sieve, and then we're gonna pour this egg mixture through the sieve, and this will just catch any of the pieces that didn't incorporate and will also create a really nice smooth custard. Okay, so now this is the part where you really have to be careful. There are a couple of things throughout this process where it can all go wrong. And this is one of them. So pay attention, this is what you wanna do. You wanna set your mixture on high just until it starts to boil, whisking all the while. You do wanna kind of keep this mixture moving so that it doesn't burn on the bottom. Once it starts to boil, that is going to activate that cornstarch. So then you wanna turn down your flame to like a medium-low, and then you'll start to see your mixture will begin to thicken. So go ahead and continue to whisk just until you get a nice, creamy, smooth mixture on your hands. And at this point, we are going to add a tablespoon of butter. Just whisk it in, and this will create a really nice, smooth texture. Then we're gonna transfer our pastry cream to a shallow bowl. I like to use a shallow bowl because it will just cool quicker that way. And then place some plastic wrap on top, making sure that you're actually placing it down with your hand so that your pastry cream does not form a skin. Go ahead and pop it in the fridge until you're ready to use. So before we get started on the shells, one thing I do like to have prepared in advance is my cookie sheet. So you're gonna line your cookie sheet with some parchment paper. And then if you are a perfectionist, and sometimes when you set out on these projects, I know I can be the same way, I do like to have them look pretty. And part of that is making sure they're all uniform in size. That will also help them cook at the same rate as well. As you can take a pencil and with a ruler, just draw out 4-inch lines. You're gonna do 5 on the top, and then stagger the next row below and do 5 on the bottom. And what we're gonna do is then flip our paper and see, you can see it showing through, and that will just serve as a guideline as we go to pipe out our eclairs, assuring that they're all the same size, and you're not gonna have any fights if somebody starts to say they're getting the bigger one, which is what my children would do. At this point, it's time to make our pastry shells, or the pâte à choux as it's called. So take out a large saucepan, you're going to add 9 tablespoons of butter, and 1 cup of water. Basically what you want to do is melt that butter and heat the water until everything is liquefied. So while the butter and water is heating, you can mix together your dry ingredients. So in a small bowl, we're going to add a cup of flour, 2 teaspoons of sugar, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. You can go ahead and just whisk that up until it's combined. Once your water mixture is bubbling, then we're going to add this dry mixture, and then with a wooden spoon, start to mix it up. And what will happen is it'll begin to pull away from the sides, and you'll see you'll get a nice little dough ball on your hands. At that stage, this is the other part where it can all go wrong. You wanna make sure that you cook that dough ball mixture on a medium-low flame for about a minute. And what that is going to do is really combine that flour and the butter well. If you don't do this stage, what will happen is when you go to pipe out your pastry and it hits a hot oven, the butter and flour will start to separate, and that's when you'll begin to get cracks and the butter will ooze out and it'll be a whole big mess. So take a minute now to avoid a disaster faster later. And go ahead and just cook that up. And at this point, I do like to make a little indentation in the dough ball because this is where we are going to place our lightly beaten eggs. And the reason you want to do that is so that the heat from the pot doesn't start to scramble the eggs. So I find that if it hits the dough ball, it'll prevent that from happening. We're going to slowly pour 4 lightly beaten eggs onto our dough ball and start to mix with that wooden spoon. And at first it's gonna look like a big slimy mess, and it's not gonna look like anything is gonna come out of this, but I'm telling you, if you just keep mixing, you will start to get a beautiful dough on your hands. So now it's time to transfer our pâte à choux to our pastry bag, fitted with a round tip that's about a ½ inch in size. And then you can twist your bag, and then we're basically just going to trace our lines. Now, as you're piping your lines, you'll notice the end, you'll get like a little peak at the end. Not to worry, there's a way that we're gonna fix that in a minute. So go ahead and just get all your piping done. At this stage, we're gonna take a spoon that has been dipped in some cold water, and we're just gonna go over and just touch it with any of the peaks, and you'll see that will get them to settle down. You can just go in there and make any adjustments that you need to make sure all of your eclairs are looking good. Because if they don't look good now, they're gonna bake that way and then you're not gonna be happy later. So go ahead and just take a little time to pretty them up. Now it's time to bake our eclairs, and this is the other critical part when it comes to making a great eclair, the way that you bake your shells. So what you're gonna do is place them in the oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 minutes. And during this stage of baking, this is when your eclairs are gonna turn golden brown and they're going to rise up. After the 15 minutes is up, you want to reduce your oven to 350 and bake for another 20 to 25 minutes. And what this is going to do is allow those eclairs to bake in the inside and really start to dry out. Because if the shells are not dried out in the interior, what's going to happen is they're going to collapse when they hit the cold air after you take them out of the oven. After the second stage of baking is up, here's the other critical part. You want to turn off your oven and open your door and let your shells rest in the oven for 10 minutes. And the reason you want to do that is you want them to cool down at a very gradual rate. If you take them out now and you actually put them on the counter, they're also going to deflate. So leaving them in the oven to actually cool themselves is really going to prevent that. So that's step number 1. Number 2 is you want to go in with a small knife and just cut an incision about a ½ inch on the side of the shell. And what that's going to do is release the steam. Again, if you don't release the steam, they also could collapse. So that's another critical part to the process, which will dry out those interiors and allow them to keep their structure. Once your shells are cool, then we're going to prepare them for filling. So all you're going to do is flip them over to reveal their bottoms. Then what I like to do is take a little pastry tip, about a ½ inch in size, that has a little jagged edge, you know, something that looks like a little star tip, and then pierce the bottom of them and make 2 to 3 holes on the bottom, depending on how much pastry cream you like. So if you like a lot of cream, go for 3 holes, equidistant. If you're like halfway, go for 2. Then we are going to transfer our pastry cream into a pastry bag fitted with the same size tip. If you wanted to use the same tip, you could. And then we are just going to fill our eclairs. Now, you gotta be careful. You don't wanna overdo it because these things are fragile. So just go ahead and give it a little squirt in each hole and you'll feel the weight of it, that they're actually being filled with the pastry cream. Then it's time to prepare our chocolate glaze. So to prepare our glaze in a large heat-safe bowl, you're gonna add a 1.5 cups of semi-sweet chocolate chips. And then you are going to pour over a cup of hot, heavy cream. Let it stand for just a few minutes, and then you can go in with a whisk and whisk it up. And you'll see it won't look like much at first, but as you continue to stir, you're gonna get a very smooth, chocolatey velvet ganache. Then to keep our chocolate nice and liquefied, you can take your heat-safe bowl, put it on top of a saucepan that has about 1 inch of simmering water. That will keep that chocolate nice and pliable. So we're gonna take our eclair, we're gonna lift it upside down and just give it a nice little dunk in the chocolate bath. And then when you release it, you can transfer it to a cooling rack. So we're gonna do that with all of our eclairs, just making sure they're all getting a nice amount of chocolate. Once all your eclairs are done, you can transfer them to your favorite serving piece. And at this point, I do recommend keeping them in the fridge until you're ready to serve. And when you bring these to the table, you will get wows all around. It is so impressive to see a homemade chocolate eclair that you have made from scratch. I tell you, all of the hard work that went into making them is well worth the effort. I hope you guys give this one a try and let me know what you think. And for more delicious recipes, be sure to subscribe. Always makes me happy when you guys subscribe. And I will see you back here next week for another one. Until then, bye.